I felt like I'd been let into a sweet shop. There was money, cab accounts, everyone was good looking. I couldn't believe I was allowed into it, and just immediately used all the flow, exploited those resources.
But you were
spent
allowed to,
all the goodwill.
My memory of it is they let you do stuff.
You were meant to, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, I can never remember being a script. They would give me a list of songs and say, you know, you got a minute and a half to introduce these. And I remember coming up, I had a great time there and was writing stuff and incorporating it, you know, later on into my act. So you were amazing on it because all you had to do was be you.
That's right.
Which must have been the perfect job.
Finally. And when I characterise my life prior to recovery and perhaps even post, it's like a race between my attributes and my flaws, which in the early life the flaws were always much faster because they were using drugs to up performance enhancing drugs.
They had an unfair advantage.
Yeah, if they were tested, it'd be like, well, look, the flaws have been using crack, so they should be struck off, if anything. So so the opportunities like that, MTV. I mean, in the end, it became really good material because I was putting myself in quite extreme situations. So, like, it became interesting to report back from there. And also, I suppose I developed a little bit of an audience. I developed a bit of an understanding. And it was after, when I come out of treatments, carried on doing stand-up because I, by that stage, learned that I needed to have something. The thing that, I consider myself a comedian before or else because comedy should be present in most of the things you're doing, and I suppose it's hard when I get waylaid in politics or self-help or whatever because these are sort of serious subjects, but as John Cleese says, the more serious a subject is, the more you require comedy. People mistake seriousness for solemnity. Don't need to be solemn. You can be you should be joking about death, you should be joking about your marriage, you should be joking about the most serious things, race. All of these things are where we need comedy to, because what I feel like it is, Bob, this is a theory I'd like to run past you, not theory, because Neil deGrasse Tyson says theory means it's been properly worked on and worked out.
Who says that?
That Neil deGrasse Tyson, the astrophysicist. He says theory means you've done all sorts of algebra. This is what this is if at best a hypothesis. Like that comedy is a continual reference to an ulterior and not always visible realm, but that we're always aware of. And I think Tommy Cooper is a great example of it because it's almost like on the surface what's happening is, all right, I just want to do this magic act. Oh no, things keep going wrong. And the reference is the secondary thing that's happening. And with Peter Cook, with his almost sort of reptilian, cold, brilliant distance, it's like he's aware that none of this is real. None of it matters. We're all pretending to do our jobs, to do our stuff, to be in our marriages, to get on with our lives. But underneath it, there's this sort of awareness that we're all going to die, we're in limitless space, and if we don't have some sort of comedic catharsis, I can't cope.
No, you're absolutely right. That's a brilliant... I'd call it a theory.
Thanks.
I don't care what Michael Tyson's theory is. Grayson Perry, I don't give a toss what he said. No, you're absolutely right. And that's... We'll in a minute we'll deal with the problems now that's becoming less and less something you're able to do. But you're right, it is, the more serious it gets, it's like at the moment, I mean, when I started it was all Thatcher and that was fine and you had to stay one side of the argument, that was it. But now when I talk to young comics on this show, I try and say to them, you are aware you're living in the golden age now of comedy. Because everything that is bothering you as a person, like Trump and Brexit and all these things, it's just a rich golden harvest of material for you. You should be able to have great fun with that. Yeah. And I find that a lot of them don't think they think that's sort of out of bounds. No, I don't want to touch that. It's too serious. Well, nothing's too serious.
Don't you sometimes I sometimes think, what would Bill Hicks be writing? That's what I like. I feel like, how would Bill Hicks handle Trump? How would he handle Brexit? And obviously my sense is that he would handle it with such grace and dexterity and brilliant voices and with rage and anger, and to the point where, in fact, with my heroes, I think, well, each of them really what they are is they are themselves, absolutely, and in the end that's what you're left with. I can't try to emulate, but I understand it because it feels like, now more than ever, comedy is subject to a degree of analysis where Like, yeah, I think it was Ricky. I heard Ricky Gervais once say, "Yeah, the fact that it's offensive, that's why you're using a reference to children or a reference. It's not. That's why you're using an extreme thing because you know it's offensive. It's not that you're unaware or you're being derisory about that subject, and." I feel like, in a way, it's like an attempt to minimise the territory in which debate can happen, a kind of a prescriptive form of sort of public discourse, a narrowing of or a shrinking of the public sphere. That I don't really know who's in charge of it or who's benefiting from it, except it's making people feel like, well, can't I just say this anymore?
Well, exactly. And Ricky speaks about it eloquently, as you do yourself, because his thing is, please, if you do nothing else, if you choose not to like anything I do, that's fine. But please grant me the realisation that I know what I'm doing, that I haven't accidentally offended you, because if I'd accidentally offended you, that would be offensive. The fact that I'm doing it on purpose, can't you see that? I'm sharing it with you.
It's leaving a great deal of territory open to what is referred to as the right, because they don't have those boundaries. They're able to say, this is what I think about differences between the genders. This is what I think about the assumed characteristics of different national or racial groups. That because they're like unbound from the accusation of hypocrisy or a sort of an unobtainable standard of puritanism. Like someone asked, I'd done that Oxford Union, and like one of the students at the end goes, what do you think about, I don't know, possibly political correctness? And I said, like, I don't, like, as a human being, if I felt like I'd hurt someone's feelings, I'd feel really bad about it and would have to go, I'm really sorry about that, I meant it this way. Like, I don't get pleasure from hurting people, but the diminishing of the space in which we can be funny is not good for our species, our culture.
I love the idea that you refer to the Oxford Union as that Oxford Union, in the same way that my mother refers to where I live as that London. It's the same thing. But no, you're absolutely right. And I wasn't going to join in these things, but you're right. It does leave the territory almost completely to, let's call them the right, for want of a better word, because the only way, if they're saying this is a joke about what's different between men and women, right, if you can't counter that by saying this is a joke about what people think is the difference between men and women, but actually isn't.
Yeah.
It's something else. If you can't go into that territory, then you've given up all that ground.
Yeah.
And no, you're never going to do that in a fight. You're never going to give up that amount of ground and get into the corner. And yet, comedy seems to be pushing more and more into the corner, where it's harder to fight your way out.
Yes, it doesn't seem like a continuation of the great progress that's been made in, like, who am I to say, but like in equality between the sexes, equality between the races. It feels like that this isn't being managed with that even in mind. I question the intentions of a lot of what's going on.
So you liked Hicks?
Yeah, I loved him. Why do you not like him?
Well, I worked with Hicks.
No way.
Yeah, I did.
Because I know you come to Edinburgh and I know you've done the Dominion, so when?
I actually worked him, not at the Dominion, many years ago. Simon Fanshawe, who was a comic, came to me and said, I'm organising a little series of events, that's how Simon described them. It's called Stand Up America. I've done a deal with the unions, and it's called Stand Up America, and they're doing 5 weeks at the Queen's Theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue. And Jack, of course, Jack D is going to be the host. He's the British representative. He's the compere, the MC. But there's 1 week that he can't do. And would you do it? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And so I went along to the Queen's Theatre, and it was Roger Cabler, who was an impressionist, Billiam Coronel, who was a comic, who I see his name a lot now in the credits for, I think he's a producer like Family Guy and that sort of thing. Big George Wallace, who was over recently supporting Seinfeld, and Bill Hicks. And they were the actors, and they were. It was a bit strange for me because they were much more insular. They were much, they were very quiet, and they sort of took themselves very seriously, and there was a bit more like that. And I wound them up on I think it was about the second night, because they took it in turns. They juggled the bill amongst them.
Or who headlined?
Yes, and on one particular night, I've got to remember all 4 names. So I remember them now because they were, I remembered them. So Roger Cable, William Coronel, George Wallace, and Bill Hicks. Roger Cable. And so I went on stage and said, "Thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed this evening. You've been watching." Lovely round of applause for Roger Cable, William Coronel, George Wallace, and Bill Hicks. And when I came off, George Wallace's manager said, "What the hell was that about?" They were watching Roger Cable, William Coronel, Bill Hicks, and George Wallace. And I said, well, I don't know. Because it was a very different thing, because at that point, it's different now. You have big comics, headline. But we didn't have headliners then. It was going on last. And it was a bit of a pain to go on last. If you got to the store and you were late, "Oh, you're going on last." "I don't want to go on last." Can put the music act on last. But they took themselves very seriously. But he did give me, he gave me a good bit of advice. He didn't speak to me very much at all. He came up to me and said, I had a T-shirt on it, and it was tour dates from a tour that I'd been on, the Jongleurs Comedy Tour, and it was written on, it was a tour date, it was a tour T-shirt. And he said, is that at all relevant to what you talk about? Not in that accent. And I said, no, it's just a T-shirt. And he said, okay. Why would you want people trying to read what's on your T-shirt when they should just be looking at your face? And I said, Well, it's the only one I've got. It's the only clean T-shirt I have. But from then on, I've always worn a black shirt or a black T-shirt on stage.
That's good, isn't it? You're carrying a little bit of that with you.
Well, obviously I am. I have to say it wasn't a pleasant experience because they weren't pleasant people.
That's a shame. That's a shame. I wonder, maybe they're insular in that because they're shy or something.
Well, I think they were very serious about their job. And back then...
Where were these shows taking place, by the way?
It was the Queen's Theatre in Shaftesbury Avenue. Pretty sure it was the Queen's. It was a theatre in Shaftesbury Avenue. Simon Fanshawe organised them. And there was some I can't remember the other names, but Jack D did the other ones. And they were... So it was quite fascinating. It was nice.
I hosted a gig once that was Seinfeld, Gary Shandling, Sarah Silverman, and Jay Leno, and I died.
Oh, yeah, that's the good part of the story.
And in the audience, I think Carl Reiner, Rob Reiner, in the audience. Oh!
Really badly.
I was always like, and these are, as you say, sometimes a different. Well, there is a difference between sort of American and English comics, but particularly those that I'd listed, perhaps other than Sarah Silverman, were a very assiduous, this is like Seinfeld. It's like minims and crotchet specificity, 4 beats per bar, and I was just. I'll just improvise. I don't know where I get that, because I'm not actually an arrogant person. I'm shy and full of self-doubt. But I thought I'd just improvise some stuff. It'd be all right. And I remember being in the midway through a sort of a story, and that feeling of the increasing heat and the drying mouth and the awareness of yourself and the lights. And I was thinking, oh no, this is happening in front of Seinfeld. You idiot! Why are you improvising a story about something we've not? In fact. One of the ways that I develop material is if something happens to me that I would tell my mates about, then I do tell my mates, and then I think if it's got enough beats in it, I think, right, that can probably transfer to an audience environment. And then normally the first sort of time I say in front of an audience is bloody good, because it's fueled with a kind of the excitement and novelty. But then there'll be some times where I'm trying to recreate what I did the first time. So I'm trying to remember it. I'm trying to remember important things about the order, the pace, or whatever. And it was one of them times. So I'd already told this story about meeting the Dalai Lama and interviewing the Dalai Lama. And it was the first time I told it. It'd been a bloody brilliant story about the embarrassing things that had happened. But this time, it was not that. It was me remembering while looking at the sort of slack, disinterested jaws of the American comedic aristocracy.
Monkhouse, who I admire enormously, I think sums that up better than everyone else dying on your ass. Because he says, what happens? You're on stage and you're doing your stuff, and suddenly you become aware, why have I worn this jacket? This jacket doesn't fit. Oh my God, it's tight under the arms. And then you remember that idiot who taught you science. The idiot who told you that 97% of the human body is made up of water, because you think, there's no water in me. Nothing in me at all. But that is quite something. I mean, that, you see, everyone died on their arse. I died on their arse in front of the England football team, which was terrible because I'm a huge football fan, and that was horrible.
Which era England?
Well, Lineker was there. I remember that because every time I see his face, it still fills me with dread. And they were going off. It was their last night, and then the next night they were flying out to a tournament. So
Where
I can't
were you
remember.
entertaining them?
It was a hotel near. They used to train before St George's opened. They used to up near Watford, so it was there. And they came to this hotel and they had a meal, and then we need a comedian. They found me. I got a phone call in the afternoon. With yeah, I'm definitely free. And I did the same thing. I tried to do kind of football stuff and an advert that Gary Lineker, and it was nothing. It was horrible. It was really, really horrible. But it's still, I feel better about it now because I'll tell you who wasn't there. Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, it's better to die in front of Peter Beardsley because you can sort of go, well, you fucking...
Absolutely.
Well, you got Beardsley.
Yeah, exactly. Stuart Pearce, I'll face up anytime you like.
Terry Fenwick.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
But Seinfeld, although I did go and see Seinfeld, one of the few times I've ever paid to see comedy. I went to the O2 Centre to see Seinfeld because I wanted to see what it was about. And I did think he was magnificent.
Yeah.
Just for that reason, really, it was so precise.
Yeah.
I mean, it was sort of thing, if you saw his set list, you think, really? The difference between... Yeah, okay. But it was so... I'll tell you what it did. It showed me what observational comedy should be. You should observe something, you should see another side of it, and then you should do a joke about it, but then you should go 2, 3, 4 steps beyond that.
In a way, even though he couldn't be more, in my mind at least, distinct from a clown like Tommy Cooper, it shows that my theory, who we're calling it, holds up because he is referring to an unexplored reality beneath what we're all accepting as ordinary and exposing that to us, which in itself is suggesting that the reality that we're all accepting as normal isn't the ultimate reality. And he is, Seinfeld's job is, look, I'll tell you, underneath it is all of this.
Yes.
And he does it so articulately and beautifully, microscopically. Yeah, that it's weird, isn't it? Because he's a very bold. I've met him once or twice outside of that disastrous occasion, and like he seemed like he's a
Do you remember?
he's like quite a serious person. I've never brought it up. The other thing was, I'll just tell you this, that there is a sort of a moral component to it. It was like a David Lynch meditation foundation event for George Shapiro, who manages Seinfeld and managed fucking Kaufman, managed Andy Kaufman.
Okay.
So this guy's got Andy Kaufman stories, and anyway, and I get on very well with George Shapiro, and he's lovely. And like at the beginning, I came on with David Lynch with like a brochure of from the event brochure, and I was so funny like with this brochure. I improvised. I don't think Seinfeld. He weren't there yet.
Oh, you got a prop then.
It's only a brochure. It's not a guidebook on how to structure an anecdote, right? Like I was just funny about the prop, yeah. So I'm not Carrot Top. It's only a pamphlet, right? And I knew I was. Although I was comparing, I knew I could do another 20 later if I wanted to. And because of vanity and greed, I did the 20. And God, or whatever stands for God in the ulterior realms, punished me for that greed with a bad set. Sarah Silverman said that the one funny thing I said was like, right, well, let's face it, this isn't going well. If you thought this is a good time as any for you to discover that I'm not perfect, I apologise. I sort of retreated like a man reversing out of a car parking space that was too narrow.
Lotus Weinstock was a lady who did an open spot at the Comedy Store when they used to be on after the last act at the Late Show. They used to put the open spots on, and she had a keyboard, and she went on with the keyboard and the stand. She plugged in, and she started playing some songs, and they were comedy songs. And the Comedy Store audience, which is people, go on about, oh, weren't they great? No, they were filth. They were really nasty, hideous human beings, subhuman. And they were giving her a terrible time. And she was trying to do these songs about things that were happening in the world with a comedic... She was trying to take an off-kilter look at the world, but it wasn't working. It was terrible. And
Get back on kilter.
Yeah, and I was comparing, and Kim Kinney was standing there, get her off! And I was, oh, come on, get her off! And so I was standing right at the side of the stage, and I like to think I'm the only person who heard. what she said at the end. She said, "Okay, there's a guy called Ralph Nader. You won't know him, but he was the first man in America to say what we're doing to this planet is wrong." And I went to work for him. He ran for governor. And I went to work for him, and I was a small, tiny cog in a very big machine. And that's all I ever wanted to do, is just to make this world somehow infinitesimally better when I leave it than it was when I was on it. But that was then, and now all I want to do is get off this stage with some dignity. And
it was such an awful experience that it burned her down to her essence
that's what it does.
of a human being. That's what's in her. That's the pearl in the middle of that woman.
That's all that's left of me is this. Comics who haven't experienced yet the actual full horror of when you're all on your own there. Because if you're doing a bringer gig or a little open mic gig, it doesn't really matter, because there's 20 people there. But when you've died in a big space, and no one's even, they've stopped heckling.
Oh yeah,
They've not
even got the energy to heckle or the respect.
Exactly, they won't even pay you. And then they turn around and start talking to each other because they don't even want to look at you.
Yeah.
I think that does something to you.
It feels to me, thinking about it now while we're discussing it, is like the sort of the worst feelings of shame and despair that you feel in your moments of self-torture and loneliness and regret, brought to a public forum, forced to be witnessed and lived and dramatised.
That which should only be experienced crouching in a corner of your bedroom at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
You're suddenly having at the Hackney Empire.
Like when you finished vomiting after a hangover and you make your way back to bed, I think I'm done now. Suddenly someone puts a spotlight on that.
Someone introduces you.
Welcome to the stage. Yeah.
Okay, so, and then you became famous comic and you did all your tours. How'd that all work out? That was good. All your Netflix specials.
That was a good bit. Here's a really, really good bit. I'd done Edinburgh, right? And we'd booked to do the Assembly Rooms, 100-seater gig. But the program, Big Brother program I'd done so well that I booked a 1,000-seater venue for just after, because it sold out so quickly. So I did like the 100-seater one and then would go and do the 1,000-seater one. And the first night that I heard, like, when the lights, I was in the wings and the lights went down and there was the sound of screaming. And I thought, oh, good. Finally, let's let this guy out.
Those are the glory days.
I'll take it from here, Russell.
Those are the days that I do remember having seen one where you can... takes you quite a long time to get up to the mic and start talking. I think one there was a good 4.5 minutes of just. I know I think you just want to look at me for a while.
Wow, them were the days. Yeah, that sort of moment of feeling, that was, in a sense, I suppose, the opposite of that feeling of... But neither of them are true, I suppose. You know, the feeling of the terrible, coruscating shame of failure, or the momentary elation of that can come from adulation and approval. Each of them, you know, as Rudyard Kipling says, are exposed to be sort of temporary, transient experiences. And I think that's what can be sort of quite hard. I've spoken to other comics about that, of like when you go home and it's been brilliant and it's like, what, now I'm just me in my room doing nothing? No, thank you.
Well, that is difficult, and I suspect, I don't know, and I would never ever presume, but I would suspect that may be perhaps at the root of some of your other problems.
Yeah, you've got. I feel like if you've invited that level of intensity, if you're occupying that level of intensity, something's got to happen. And by that time, I was already not drinking or taking drugs. You've got to have some kind of way of parachuting out of that. It's sort of. And again, like for me now, ultimately, what I've discovered, I've been told, not discovered, is that the only way to do that is through forms of spiritual experience, meditation, think about other people. And oddly, actually, family life was a better salve than any of those things that I tried. All of those cliches I picked up somewhere from NME. Like, it turns out that instead, if I have to change a nappy or pick up poo off of a floor, that's like, okay, yeah, that's...
Because that is more important than the last little riff that you did on stage.
Yes, it's been put into its proper perspective of basically irrelevant thing that was happening near you a minute ago. It's not happening now. My wife is like... It's not a studied indifference or a cold austerity, but like it is a sort of a remarkable, oh yeah, that's nice type attitude. She doesn't care.
There is nothing better. There is nothing better for any comic, especially when they're starting out, when they're weighing up, is somebody saying, "Is this a bit?"
Right. Well, if you're working something out with them.
When you start talking to them about something, they say, is this a bit? And sometimes they say, no, it's not a bit. I'm seriously saying about this shop that we're going to is, okay. I'll never know whether you're doing a bit. And you think, yeah, okay, fair enough. Let's make a deal. I won't do bits to you.
No.
And that's great, because then there's a place where you ain't doing bits. Because comics, most of the time, are doing bits.
Yeah, right. I suppose it's a social and communicative survival strategy. Is that you better come up with something funny.
Yeah, because we're constantly rehearsing.
Yeah. Well, there's no rehearsing around my house. She's just not that interested. I don't think she even knows. Like, she doesn't come to see stuff. She's not bothered. I'd have to show her, like, oh look, yeah, I did this thing. But she doesn't really care at all. Not in a way that's sort of cold, but in a way that's actually necessary.
No, it's not like she says, all right, I'll tell you what, let's make a cup of tea and let's see that bit where you died in front of the sun. She don't do that.
I've managed to get that tape off George Shapiro. Oh look, let's just rewind. Look at that, there's the moment there where you finally realise your dreams would never happen.
But they are happening now.
I tell you what, yeah, actually, this is because of... It was an extreme journey. Because of prior, it felt quite extreme. Like, I mean, everyone's life is extreme to them, I suppose. But like, it felt to me like, oh my God, this is taking ages. There was addiction and poverty and all this kind of thing. And then when it did happen, it was such a rush of stuff and adulation and indulgence. And this is, in fact, the first time that there's been any sense of, well, that's just a job, a line of work, and what you do is you live with these two little girls and your missus.
And if you do it well, you are able, it gives you the wherewithal to enjoy the rest of it.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of it.
There was no rest of it before.
Well, exactly, but now there is a rest of it.
You've got to have a rest of it, Bob, otherwise there's the madness.
Oh, always the rest of it. All right, listen, I've taken up enough of your time, because I know how valuable it is, because you've got tours to do and books to write and sessions to...
You don't talk about sitcoms? Like, what's your favourite sitcoms?
Yeah, fine. I'm happy to talk about sitcoms. What's your favourite sitcom?
Blackadder, 2, 3, 4, for both the 40 Towers, obviously, and like seasons 2 and 3 of Fools and Horses. I like BBC conventional comedy. Yes, I've subsequently learned to love the esoteric things from the sidelines and little gems that are harder to find, and going back further in history and across continents and whatnot. But like that mainstream BBC One comedy, that's what sort of, that I lived for that.
How do you feel about Mrs. Brown's Boys?
Well, do you know what? I'm not like, to be honest, I'm not a snob about it, because like I feel like if something is successful, it's like you're telling people that they're wrong or something.
There you go. Thank you, especially because what you've done inadvertently, you've lost a lot of fans.
Right.
Just by saying that, because there are people now, I promise you, and you know who you are, sitting out there in your bed sits, wondering whether have I got enough water to boil one more kettle. And you're now thinking, oh no, we thought he was ours.
But they did that thing in Ireland for years and years and years.
They did the Glasgow Empire for 6 summers. And they do it, and I'm sorry, I don't care. Listen, I've worked with Bill Hicks, all right? I've worked with Bill Hicks, and yet I still think it is devastatingly funny when I watched it the other night, and they sat down, and Buster, who's a thief, had stolen a mobile phone. And Mrs. Brown said, where did you get that? Well, I got it off someone in the market. Oh, you've stolen it. What is it? It's a mobile phone. And she says, what's all that black plastic tape on it? And he says, it's a regulation, the BBC, we're not allowed to advertise which one it is. And she picks up and says, well, it's obviously an iPhone 7. I'm sorry, I think that's funny.
Yeah. They're aware of the form. I mean, like the sort of postmodern device of referencing the audience is good, and is as a good version as well done as any audience referencing thing that I've seen, like Gary Shandling show or Sean show or whatever. And I feel like that there's that's for me folk culture. Like you can't. I don't think it's right to sort of like, you wouldn't if it was from like if it was an interest from a sort of a minority, for example.
No, you wouldn't dare. So really, I don't like that.
But that's, for me, that is like working people's humour. And it's all right to have different tastes. I like it, I don't like it, whatever. It's not a big deal. But to sort of turn it into sort of an ideological, like a condemnation of it, like then people know what they're doing. He's been doing that for ages.
Absolutely knows what he's doing. I'm so glad. I knew you'd like it. And you liked Hancock, didn't you?
Yeah, I love Hancock. I love it because, as we found out, that is actually how he felt.
Yeah.
Like, so when you're seeing him look like that. And also like the sort of like what it is to be trapped in your mind. Even the famous in the Blood Donor, before he's in with the doctor when he's doing drink a pint of milk a day, drink a pint of milk a day, and gets caught by June Whitfield.
Yeah, coughs and sneezes, said disease, catch your Johnson handkerchief. And also about him, what we see, why it becomes genius is there are certain when I think it's Hugh Lloyd, and he's explaining to him, Hancock is explaining to him how it works, how the human body works, and Hugh said, "Oh, really? Oh, wow. So, are you a doctor?" And Hancock said, "I never bothered."
I never bothered.
That is genius.
Basically, yeah, the hubris of the man.
Yeah.
Like when I learned that him and Sid is essentially Quixote and Sancho Panza. I was like, wicked. That's the archetype. You have the dreamer, the grandiose dreamer, and the realist, which you see, like, you know, again, in like it's a comic template, a comic archetype, like the Del Boy forever dreaming, Rodney always bringing him down, but then I suppose there's the flip of Rodney, you know, having his artistic and moral pretensions, and Del Boy being a brutal realist. These are sort of like, these comic tropes are, I think, part of the architecture of the British people. And you see with, like, you know, when I'm around English people chatting, like whether it's sort of working class or sort of middle class people, you see how vital comedy is to the English. And I think it's like that our language is somehow a great facilitator of the pun, of the riff. I don't know what it is, but it's something that is in our nature, that it's necessary for English people to embrace comedy. I feel it's like in a sense, our defining attribute.
And what I love is when you rediscover something from years and years and years ago. I can remember probably 25 years ago. So I was a family, you know, and I'd lived, you know, and I was working in comedy, and I'd worked with Sadovitz, you know, I knew what was what. I wasn't a virgin. And I rewatched the first Carry On film where they're
Doctors?
Private. When they're on the assault course, and Kenneth Williams and Charles Hawtrey are running, looking away at this dummy with a bayonet, are going over, and not Pertwee, the original Doctor Who, Troughton, I think, it was the Sergeant Major, says, "What's the matter with you two? You've got to go in there, you've got to bayonet, you've got to stuff it in a bayonet, twist it round, oh my God, you're going to go to war," and says to Kenneth Williams, "Look at you, could you kill a man?" And Kenneth Williams says, "Eventually." Which is, and I remember seeing that, wow, homosexuality was illegal then. And he's still saying, yes, I could eventually kill a man. And I love all that. Oh, you don't, because I'll go. Hancock is the one. It's the choice of it. See, that's where it's the poetry. There is poetry in comedy, good comedy, and I don't care whether it's Monkhouse or Chubby Brown even. When I see poetry in it.
Monkhouse, and people seem to... I'm from Kent, people seem to know I'm from Kent. I hear them mutter it as I pass.
Yeah. That's what... And all that, you know, when I was a child, I told people I wanted to be a comedian, and they laughed. No one's laughing now. All that kind of stuff. It's just... And there is poetry there. There is no reason... There could have been any number of colours that made up the school scarf of Anthony Aloysius Hancock at the school that he went to. But the fact that one of them is heliotrope is just divine. And in my house, if people go in somewhere and then they come out, one of us will always say, "I wouldn't have rented you this room if I knew you were going to be in and out all day." Because that's what she says to him. And he says, "What do you mean in and out? I went out. You must have known, therefore, that I was going to come in. And now, having come in, I have things to do, and I'm going to go out again. That's not in and out. So, no, I've gone there.
What about when, like, in the early sort of radio ones, you can hear, like, that I can see why he would be averse to the inclusion in the cast of Williams, because it's like the pitch of laughter when he does that, what he called the snide character.
Hello.
He just messes stuff up.
Yeah, absolutely. I do fully 100% understand that. And obviously, getting rid of Galton Simpson was the different thing. But you do understand what I mean, because he's doing this stuff. He's doing, in Sunday Afternoon at Home, he's doing seeing faces in the wall. You see the faces in the wallpaper? Nah, it's just a rose. No, it's a little man sitting on a... No, it's just a rose tub. No, look, he's got a dog. He's a little man from the countryside over there. He's smoking a pipe. He's got a little dog. You must be able to see him. No, it's just a rose. And he then says, all right, leave it, forget it. Just you wait till you want me to see something. Which is, and he's doing that. And then Kenneth Williams comes in. Hello. And you're right. It's Sunday. It must have driven him mad.
Yeah, because there's sort of subtlety and nuance, which which Galton Simpson went to explore more in Steptoe and Son, which Hancock was such an incredible vehicle for, with his demeanour, his inherent sadness. But Kenneth Williams, and particularly in that context, and he probably couldn't do that as a lead, only as a supporting actor or comic or whatever. It's like an element of chaos, and I think it was somewhat, even where in that Carry On film it was explicit, or in Round the Horn with Julian and Sandy, it was like explicitly referencing like homosexuality. It's almost as if the audience were somehow charged with the knowledge that this guy is some sort of mad trickster that's referencing something. Again, that idea, he's referencing something we don't sort of know about, that's not explicit, that's not visible.
And because what's terribly sad about his life when you're reading the books is that he did all the Carry On films, which made him so famous, but never gave him the money to escape that fame. So he said, I never earned enough that I could send out for my shopping. I still had to go to the grocers and buy this. So I had to see these people and, Ken. That was a terribly sad life. But you've avoided that by being happy and by having a nice family life.
Well, yeah, I've been lucky in that I've not a pre-Wolfenstein homosexual man when it was still illegal hanging out with Joe Orton and that. And I don't know, man. I just had some good breaks and lived in a convenient
Wilfred Bramble
time.
hated it, you see, because Wilfred Bramble was a homosexual, almost steptoe, but because of the money he earned from Steptoe and Son, he could go to Morocco. It was, people didn't go abroad, you go to Morocco, and what he hated more than anything is that quite quickly air travel got cheaper and people started going to Morocco. And he said, I'd be sitting in my lovely linen suit with a beautiful young boy in a bar in Morocco, and people would walk, that's old man Steptoe. So that ruined his life, basically.
Yeah, I think he got nicked for it during Steptoe.
He did get nicked for it. Why have I feel like I've had this conversation recently? Because John Gielgud got nicked as well.
Yeah.
John Nicholson. I had this conversation with John Nicholson when they were talking about homosexuality. So I joined in the conversation. Well, I thought it was the least I could do. I didn't want to stand out.
No,
do you know Chick Murray?
The Scottish comic. Billy Connolly references him a lot.
Oh man!
But sort of like gag type man. Huh?
Well, no, actually, he's very, very. He does a wonderful thing. Here's one line from Chick Murray, and I'll leave you to discover it himself. Something happens. There's an incident. He's in a pub, and he's sitting in the pub, and he then says, "Anyway, I sat for a while drinking, and then the door opened, and everybody looked over. I looked over as well. I mean, I've seen doors open thousands of times. There was no magic in it for me, but I didn't want to be left out." So get Chick Murray, you'd like him.
Yeah.
You'd like him.
You like the things that have a sort of a gentle, observational sort of sense, like a sort of like the in mundanity.
What I love is, as I point out, stuff that I couldn't do.
Right.
And I'm never jealous of it. I just think I'm so happy that that's there. So I can do my blustering, bolstering, but this wonderful subtlety still exists.
Yeah, like I suppose in bed with my dinner was like sort of wisecracky,
Yes.
bullshit.
Yeah, let's laugh at these people.
I loved that show, and we ripped it off for Ponderland, like what I done, which was a video clip show. We used the same structure. It was really funny. It was like it was on quite late at night, wasn't it? I feel like when it used to be
Yes,
on.
it was. Well, in fact, I'll tell you why it was
on.
on quite late at night, because it was done under a different set of rules. It was done under review rules, because we never got permission to use the clip.
You had to sort of claim it was review, then you got
claim
access.
it was review, which was that's the only way. That's why it's failed in the end, because in the end they all stopped giving us access. Richard
because some of them were older, like I feel like you were doing stuff that were 5-10 years older even.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you did one about crime, like sort of like a crime documentary or something, or people that were doormen or something. I remember some stuff like
the Knockers we did, but don't say you ripped off, because I saw it as an homage.
Homage.
Yeah.
We homaged it, all right.
In future, you use that. All right, listen, that's it. We've done. I'm sorry, what's that? Is that a snake on your finger?
Yeah, it's a mistake actually. Like it's a Kundalini serpent. Like it's meant to represent that the energy in your belly can become coronated and divine. My mate Matt says it looks like a snake dragging a handbag.
It does look very, very much like, or a small, maybe a mandolin.
Yeah, it was like when I woke up the night after I'd had that done, I thought, oh fuck, that really hurt, and now I've got this tattoo on my hand.
Have you got a lot of tattoos?
Yeah, quite a lot actually.
See, that's the one thing I'm slightly jealous of. I give you your success and your good luck. I have one tattoo. I was in Blackpool and I went to a tattoo artist. It was my 40th birthday. It wasn't my birthday, but I was 40, and I said, I'm 40. I was in the Navy for one, yet I still have not got a tattoo. And I want a tattoo. And I sat with the man for about an hour, a couple of hours, and we drew the tattoo. And the tattoo was going to be an angel with her hair down, looking sort of down on the wings, and she would be standing on a rock, and the sea would be, going round, and the dog, my dog, would be on the rock, and she'd be holding a tablet which had the names of my wife and my son and my daughter, and it would go from the shoulder down to the elbow, and that would be it. And we agreed on the design, and then he said, well, I'll start now. We'll do an hour now, and then you come back tomorrow and we'll finish off, and I'll do the colouring in the afternoon. And it was quite expensive, and after about 11 minutes, I just gave him all the money and said, I've got to go now, I can't stand the pain. And so what I have on my arm is the tablet with my wife's name spelt wrong. There's a letter missing off it, because the pain...
You couldn't even get to the end of your wife's name?
No, the pain was so exquisite that it was...
Abbreviate it. It's a pet name.
I could have done that. Yeah. I said, well, that's what I called you. I never used the last N. You know that. But you seem to have them, and that one on your wrist especially.
I got into it, like the pain. Eventually, in any situation where there's pain, the body, releases some endorphins, let you off the hook, and
no,
those endorphins
not
in
to
themselves.
that extent. It doesn't.
No, you weren't getting any.
No, not at all. And I don't think that works so much with self-inflicted pain, does it?
It was. Yeah, mostly like I sort of.
But you've got one on your wrist, and
he was very. The tattoo artist who done these, Mark Mahoney, he does all like sort of Mexican mafia, but does Johnny Depp. I think he done Nicholas Sarkozy or whatever he's called, that bloke who used to be president of France.
Is he in Blackpool?
This all happened. This has all happened in Blackpool. This is where these people come to receive this.
Because this guy charged me 180 quid, which I thought was quite steep. Is that the sort of?
Do you know what? I think Martin Mahoney, he's not far off that. They turned you over up there. You just should have stuck with a Kiss Me Quick hat and a little romp up and down the front.
Russell Brand, Mentors, How to Help and Be Helped.
Oh, yeah, there's a book I wrote.
This is a book what you have read.
Yeah.
First thing I want to say, beautiful feeling.
Feels nice, doesn't it?
It really does, because it has the embossing on the front. It's almost like if I was to close my eyes, I'm right back at school, and I've covered one of my exercise books with wallpaper.
That's what we were going for. I will say, just don't open it. It's downhill from there. Just touch the cover for a while.
No, the cover sounds beautiful, but then it's Mentors, Russell Brand Mentors, How to Help and Be Helped, Bluebird Books for Life. It goes on for my daughters, which is lovely.
Nice touch.
Which is, and there's all the and so is this the 12-step one?
No, that was the last book I've done.
Well, this is all numbered as well. Mentor.
Yeah, we got to put
3,
chapter
Mentor
numbers.
4.
Bob,
No,
that's
but the
part of the convention.
But chapter 4 is Mentor 3, The Goodness and Guru.
one of my mentors, Jimmy Mulville, big Everton fan, a person that helps me a lot, and like he grew up sort of near Stanley Park and that. And when I was sort of coming up with the title series, I thought, give them little names that the people that you're talking about, because each one is talking about a person that's been influential and helpful in my life. Mentors, as the title indicates, and like in the case of Jim, like I thought, yeah, that's the thing he'll like.
And what is unique about the badge of Everton Football Club?
That bit of Latin?
No, lots of football club badges have Latin on them.
I don't know.
It's the only one to feature a place of internment, a prison, if you will.
That tower's a prison, is it?
That is the Goodison or whatever, maybe the Stanley Park. It's where they used to lock up the drunks at night and then come back and let them out.
Making that their emblem.
Well, I think it's a local feature.
Use that jail.
Yeah, a lot of people think it's a beehive, but it's not a beehive either. And Mentor, I'll just pick these at random.
Yeah, go on.
Mentor 5, the Park Bench Merlin. I'm guessing this is someone you met in a park with a funny hat, is it?
No, it's like this is a person, Bruce, who's like a person who gives me a lot of counsel, but he himself was a proper park bench drunk. But that sort of, drunk his way to wisdom, although that wisdom was only accessed when he stopped drinking. The list of contents in this book lends itself completely to my favourite little gag that anyone can do at anything they see, which is number 7, the Aphrodite of the Damned, Pink Floyd's slightly less successful follow-up to to Animals.
Yeah, the Aphrodite of the Damned, the Divine Mother. Obviously, we all know what that is. That is the Mother Earth, the Mother Spirit.
Yeah, within us, without us.
Yeah. And missed chances before the student is ready.
That's when I think I was hankering after tutelage and mentorship, but wasn't really tuned into it. And actually, I talk a lot about, I used to love Rob Newman. And I'd done a gig at Hackney Empire, the new act competition actually, and got to the final of it. It was quite drunk. Arthur Smith hosting it, and I misused Arthur Smith's dressing room prior to that event, but no worse than what he'd have done with it. And after that, Hackney Empire were doing some sort of political type gig, and some of my content was a bit political, I suppose. And they asked me to do this gig, which was a huge break for me.
Red Wedge thing, a cast gig.
Probably would have been that, because I think Jeremy Hardy, rest in peace, was there, and Rob Newman was there. And I loved Rob because I loved Mary Whitehouse Experience. I thought he was so cool, and I was unable to hold the idea that I was in a room with him, and I think I sort of got near him and blushed and sort of wanted to touch him and stuff. Not in a overly confident way. I just sort of couldn't accept that this is just a person in a room and soon this experience will be over. I thought there must be something that I can get from him. I can
get out of this. I don't want to be left with nothing.
Nothing, because this is so important that this is happening. But Rob Newman, I think in particular at that point, because he's gone on, of course, to become sort of like so. What do I want to say? It's like I admire him again for the progress he's made.
Well, he's changed out of all recognition. That he is now Robert Newman.
Right.
He made that very syllable. Yes, he made that very, very. That was a big change. He was always Rob Newman, and then one day I went and he was Robert Newman. What makes me sad? No, it doesn't make me sad because it's none of my business. It's just life, and life can't make you sad. Is that both Robert and David have done this show, but separately, and not really talked about each other. It's a shame because I think, no, come on. But I think towards the end,
they had that fame smash in their lives, and I feel like it messes people up, and I think from what I gather, it was quite a divisive experience for them. That Rob's obviously was then, I think, a very brilliant, very fragile person, and I don't think they had it in them to hold the intensity of the fame that they experienced, from what I understand.
I have to tell you this story, and I don't usually tell. This show isn't about me telling you stories, but. Very sadly, my mother-in-law passed away some time ago, and because it's a Muslim family, and one of the things was after the funeral, there has to be a ceremony, and the ceremony has to be conducted by a Muslim, preacher, and a Hajjah. Yes, I'm sorry, a Hajjah. He comes and he does various things. And on the day of the ceremony, my wife and all the women who were going to be there were sort of getting ready for it. And my wife said to me, would you mind, although this is just for women, would you mind going and picking up the Hajjah? He's in a mosque in in Shoreditch. I believe it was Shoreditch, wasn't it? Kingston High Road. So I had to go.
I know that mosque.
Yeah. So I went there, and you have to park very carefully. You have to park just around the side. And I went in and said, I've come for the Hodja. And they said, OK, he's just finished. He'll be down about 5 minutes. And I said, OK, well, I'm parked awkwardly, so I'm going to wait with my car. And I went, and I was leaning against my car. And I had someone said, hello, Bob. And I looked, and it was Robert. It was Robert Newman. And I hadn't seen him for years. I said, God, Robert, how lovely to see you. Oh, God, it's nice to see him. And it was nice to see him. And we chatted for a minute what he was up to, and he was going somewhere. And I said, you've got to do my show, Tragedy Plus Time, Talk Radio, Sundays, you've got to do it. Give me your number. I haven't got your number. So you get my phone. Give me your number, right, and I'll phone you and you'll come and do it, which he did a few weeks later. And he then said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm waiting for a holy man. And he went, oh, OK. At which point the holy man came around the corner and got in the back of my car. And he said, I don't know why I thought that wasn't going to be true, but OK. And then I had to drive off with the holy man in the car. But so
Good that you had a witness to that.
Yes, absolutely. So he's in the brother Swami. Was that a real? Was a Swami?
Yeah, that's a Swami, an actual Swami, a person that like first person I met that, I suppose someone who's completely devoted himself to a spiritual life. That's gone, right, I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have kids. I'm not going to have a job. I'm just fully going to commit to this life of spirituality. I suppose that's what that book is about. Like, firstly, discovering mentors that can help you cope with who you are, and then where are you going to go? How are you going to progress? Like for me, it's I suppose about how am I going to cope with the terms and conditions of being alive. We're going to die. Everyone I love's going to die. Death. What am I going to to about that? So, and for me, the only route out of that is some understanding and connection to a spiritual life.
Okay. How to practice? Well, I like this because number 11 is right. We've talked about this enough now. Let's get at how to practice, and then becoming a mentor. So you go from this is what mentors do, and how to be one yourself almost.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. Answering the call. What's that?
You've got to help people out.
Okay. What do you have?
Otherwise, your life, my life is purposeless if I haven't on some level, if I'm not being of use to people.
What I love is that the very first chapter is called is the time before mentors, and it's called Amongst Lost Boys.
Oh, yeah.
And if there was ever a description of Russell Brand, it would be if someone didn't know, they came and said, "Well, who is he? I don't know." I would say, "Well, he's in there." But there's a lot of people in there. Find someone who you think would be one of the Lost Boys, and they would pin you down.
Sim, is it? Yeah.
No, they would just go up to you and say, "Sorry, I think it must be you I'm looking for."
Your next book should be Bob Mills, Waiting for a Holy Man. That actually, against the odds, did turn up, witnessed by Robert Newman.
You see, if I was that kind of comic, which it's too late for me to become now, that would be my Edinburgh show. That's my favourite thing when you're amongst comics and something happens, and then they say, "Oh, yeah, that thing happened there," and someone will say, "Someone phone Stuart. There's an Edinburgh show for you, right there." Are you a fan of Stuart's?
Stuart Lee?
Yes.
Yeah, he's dug me out a few times, but I do think he's a really good comic.
Well, I love him. I think he's a brilliant comic. I get upset through doing this show, not through anything else, but through doing this show, when he goes on about people, digs people out, as you say on stage, because I think he's labouring under a misapprehension. In that I think Stuart sees himself as, the political comic, the comic that he is. And when he talks about Michael and any of the Russells, the Russells sort of en masse, and he has a go at them, he sees himself as punching up. But in fact, when you talk to Michael and you talk to the Russells, they see him as almost a godlike figure, and they can't understand why he's attacking them.
Yeah, because I was like Fist of Fun, and like sort of stuff like from the 90s.
And so to them, it's like, no, hang on, he's right up there, and I'm down here, and he's attacking me, and I don't think he realises quite the esteem that he's held in.
Yeah.
Amongst the people that he attacks.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, that also these are not powerful targets in a sense, like these cultural artifacts. Even if you're talking about someone hugely famous like James Corden or whatever, James Corden, I feel like is Like, he's bloody wrote Gavin and Stacey.
Yeah.
He comes from nothing. Like,
Absolutely nothing. He's a man who suffered terribly with problems with his weight. Really terribly mental problems with his weight. He was really, really in a bad way a lot of time.
Right.
You know, but he pulls himself through that, and he's got on with his life, and here I am.
Yeah, so it's not like, I don't think it's like having a go at like someone that's running Halliburton. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, what's he doing? He's just creating stuff and doing his best. And
Neither of the Russells will equate to the Barclay brothers, for instance.
Right,
they're different targets there. So, and how much is the book?
It's generally free for you because
No.
at this point it feels like it would be impolite to charge for it, Bob. You've been handling it now, so go on, that one's on me. But it's about £12. It ain't.
Well, no. You see, you can't be doing this now.
Well, we've got to be specific.
Well, you're now in the business of selling product, all right?
I bought you that just because, out of politeness, I wasn't anticipating that this chat about comedy would become a marketing tool,
Right.
and I appreciate your professionalism.
Just glance to your right and see the people through the glass. Their job is to
Elif and Charlie.
their job is to flog these books.
Charlie actually works for me directly. She don't care.
Oh, okay. Well,
She's on a standardised salary. There's no bonuses. I've made that very clear to her.
it's $12.99, and it's published by Bluebird Books for Life. And you can get it Twitter. Oh, it's got all those
Can't buy it on
things.
Twitter, Bob. Twitter's
But can
not
you
like
buy
a
it
shop.
Can you buy it on Amazon? Can you buy it on your Kindle?
Yeah, of course.
Do you get less though if I buy it for the Kindle?
I don't know. I feel like I probably got quite a good advance, and that royalties won't really be an issue.
If there's one thing you've kept from the early days of comedy, I have no truck with bread today, jam tomorrow.
Up front.
I want all the bread and the jam, and I'll take a pot of that honey too, young man. Well, that's it. So you get that and read it. Listen, Russell, thank you so much. It's been
It's good, isn't it? I've really enjoyed it. That's what I thought I thought I'd like coming in here and talking about comedy, and I have.
Well, do you know what? I'm so glad you did, and I'm so glad that you're coming in and people come in. And I'll tell you why. Because when I was offered this job of being on talk radio, they said, "Do you want to do talk radio?" Because I work for the company. They also do talk sport. And I thought, I don't know if I want to do a talk radio, but I actually said I want to do a program about comedy.
Yeah.
Because we haven't got one.
Yeah, you don't want to get dragged into the polemicism and all that.
Exactly. But I mean, poetry, they've got one.
Have they?
Oh,
Talk radio?
Oh, no, not on talk radio. They got one on Radio 4. Poetry, please.
Right.
Opera, ballet. And I feel we've always been slightly the poor relation, and we're not. Stand-up comedy is one of the biggest businesses in show business at the moment.
Yeah,
it's
and
huge.
it's a hard
absolutely
art
huge.
and all.
And what I did say when I was flogging the program, when I was pitching the program, I said comics will come on, and the people who run this station said, "Oh, okay, so we'll need a performance space on mic, and they'll come on and perform." I said, "No, they won't come on and perform. They'll come on and talk, because the one thing I know for certain, and I've learned very little in my life as a comic, is that no one can function as a comedian who is not curious and interested in and interesting about the life around them."
Yeah.
It's the one thing that binds us all together.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? And like, when you think of proper funny people, they're always clever. E.g., to return to Paul Foot, you sort of like, you can't operate there without, if intelligence is the ability to spot patterns, then comedy is a sort of a very refined version of that.
It absolutely is. And I know some people who are dull people, but they're brilliant comics, and that's because when they get on a stage and when they start talking about something, they go off in directions that you think, I would never have dreamed that was the direction I could take. But they are brilliant at it. Even the worst comics, even the kind of real hack comics, of which there are very few, are still interesting. I can honestly say, in 32 years, I've never ever worked with anyone who I actively disliked.
Wow, that's amazing.
No other no other industry could say that.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice one. You're doing some torch carrying here, archiving. You're archiving mostly your own anecdotes, I've noticed.
Right, Russell Brand, thank you very, very much.
Cheers, Bob.
Cheers.
Thanks, mate.